doing my top 10 books slash series, because some of them are series currently of all time. I don't know what to word this. Technically they're of all time. This could change. Like when I looked back on a video from last year, this has definitely changed since then because I found new favourite books, my reading tastes have changed, but these are currently my top 10 books slash series right now. I feel like it'd be fun to maybe at the end of the year film another one of these videos, or even this time next year, to see whether these are still my favourite books. But let's just dive straight in. I thought it'd be nice just to go through some of my favourites. They might then become your favourites, who knows. Let me know whether you've read any of these, but let's jump in and go through my top 10 books. By the way, these are in no particular order. These are just currently my top 10 favourites. This is not like top to bottom, it's just in a random, these are just my top 10. So the first book we have, I actually read this book like 2 years ago, maybe even more, and it just stuck with me since then, and it's recently become more popular since I've read this book. But that book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is kind of there are elements of romance, but I'd say it's more of a literary fiction, elements of fantasy, kind of magical realism maybe. I don't really know how to describe the genre of this book. We follow Addie LaRue, who makes a deal with the dark to get out of a situation that she doesn't really want to be in. She becomes immortal, but there is a catch. She is not remembered by anyone, so she could literally go to a hotel, leave the room, come back, and they won't remember who she is. It's a little bit difficult to have day-to-day life, find relationships. She can't do any of that because literally no one remembers who she is. The book is a tale across centuries and how she is dealing with this and this new life, and how she basically has managed to live a life as an immortal that literally no one remembers at all. One day Addie then goes into a bookshop which has been in before, and the worker remembers her. So then we're kind of going through obviously the past of how she has formed this life and how she's been living this life for the past few centuries, along with the present day of her trying to work out why this person out of everyone has managed to remember her. So it's such an interesting story. I literally adore this book with all of my heart, and I will be doing a reread at some point. I'm hoping this year. I've wanted to do a reread for the past couple of years, but recently I've just been thinking about it more and more, so I think I might do one. I wasn't in the business of annotating books back then, so I feel like I want to go back through and annotate everything. This is a book that I just feel like will stick with me forever. Next book we have is also a popular favourite, I think, amongst people, and that book is Happy Place by Emily Henry. So as we know, we love Queen Emily Henry on this channel, and just everyone loves her in general. I think her writing, although it is based on romance, it is a bit more literary fiction with elements of romance, I would say, and there's a lot of other themes throughout her books, like grief or friendships and just those sorts of things. It's not always romantic relationships that are dealt with in her stories. In Happy Place though, we follow Harriet and Wynne. They have been together since college, but they broke up 6 months ago, and nobody knows. No one in their friendship group knows that they broke up. Everyone still thinks that they're together. They haven't told anybody. Now they're on their annual summer trip with their friends in Maine, and they have to pretend that they're still together because, like I say, nobody knows that they've split up. So they have to pretend to still be the perfect couple who are in love with each other, and kind of ignore the fact that some things went wrong, and just, yeah, they basically just have to fake date, pretend to be together, which is obviously, although we love fake dating, there's an added element of these people actually were together and they were in love and they still do really care for each other. But as we know, sometimes in life things happen that mean that people can't be together, or it's not the right time. So this one explores a lot of deeper themes other than just fake dating romance. As I mentioned, Emily Henry's books don't just explore romantic relationships, but in this book the theme of female friendship is quite strong, and just how you navigate those friendships and all of that sort of stuff. Sticking with the theme of Emily Henry, I have another favourite book by this author, and that book is Beach Read, which again I think is another fan favourite. In the wake of her father's passing, January goes to clear out his beach house, but when she gets there she discovers that her neighbour for the summer is Augustus Everett, who she has known from college. And I can't really remember exactly why they don't like each other, but they just kind of have not a hatred, it's not a hatred for each other, but just kind of a mutual dislike. So the both of them are authors, but despite this they are complete polar opposites. They write different stories, they're just different people, but one evening they strike up a deal to swap genres and try and write a best-selling novel in the other person's genre. So I think January writes romance novels and Gus is more deep meaningful fiction novels, so they try and write in each other's genres. So to do this, they organise a set of dates to help kind of with the creative flow and that sort of thing, and it is just adorable. We follow them along on these dates and you can just see the relationship growing and just who they are as people, and obviously there are other elements of grief and stuff in this book too, but I just adore this book so much. And again, I'm gonna probably say this for every single one, but I just want to do a reread because I loved this book. I actually read this on my holiday a couple of years ago and literally read it in like 2-3 days. It was just incredible. Now the next favourite book is actually part of a series, and this series is like one of my all-time favourites, but the book I have picked is my favourite from that series, and that is the Magnolia Parks series. But my favourite book is Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home, which is the third book overall in the series, but the second book in Magnolia and BJ's point of view. So the series currently consists of 5 books following a group of socialites in London, and it just navigates their toxic relationships, not just romantic relationships but friendships, family relationships, just everything basically. It is essentially the UK version of Gossip Girl but in a book, and I know that just sounds like a little bit trivial, but there are so many different themes written throughout this. There's like, again, people are dealing with grief and loss, and you just learn so much about these people and why they're acting this way and why they can't communicate and all that sort of stuff. And towards the end of the series we see so much character development between them, and it's just, this series just holds a special place in my heart. I just love it so much, and I immediately need the next Daisy Hates books, because when I read the first Daisy Hates book I wasn't much of a Daisy Hates girl. The second one, however, loved, and then reading Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, just the behind little hints of what's going to happen, I'm like, I need to know. I seriously need to know what's happening. So Jessa Hastings, if you could release that soon, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. The next book on this list I didn't think would ever be on this list because of the trope that is in this book, but Queen Elsie Silver just knows how to write any trope, and I would literally read anything she puts out. But that book that I'm referring to is Reckless, which is the 4th book in the Chestnut Springs series. Chestnut Springs is a small town cowboy romance series set on a ranch in the small town of Chestnut Springs, and each book follows different people in kind of a family and friend group. So it's kind of found family, kind of extended family as such. But in this book in particular we're following Winter and Theo. So Winter is Summer's sister from the first book, and Theo is Rhett's kind of, I don't want to use the word protege, but I can't think of a better word, and Rhett is also from the first book. Who are a very unlikely duo, and after one incident happens it kind of bonds them together for life. And I don't want to say too much about it because I feel like people know what trope this is, but I don't want to talk too much about that because I feel like you just need to go in and you just need to read it and you just need to trust the process, because I was like, I'm not going to enjoy this book, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. Specifically Theo Silver barking. If you know, you know. Haven't stopped thinking about that. But yeah, I literally adore this book so much. The next book we have to talk about is A Court of Mist and Fury, and if you've read ACOTAR you will know. I think this is most people's favourite book in the series. If not this, then A Court of Wings and Ruin, but this one just was top tier for me. So this one is the second book in the series and is a continuation on from the end of the first book, so I don't want to talk too much about what happens specifically in this book. But the whole series follows Feyre, who is a girl from the mortal world. She and her family are not very wealthy. She has to become a huntress to be able to provide for them, and she basically goes and hunts all their food. So one day while she's out hunting she kills a wolf who actually turns out to be a fairy, and this is treason in the Fey realm. So she's given an ultimatum where she either has to be executed or she can go and live in the Fey realm. So she chooses the second option, to go and live there. And while she's there she kind of discovers that there's something going on in the world that people aren't really talking about much, and she kind of tries to uncover this and see what's going on. So there's a little bit of like a mystery element to it as well, but I literally adore this series so much, but specifically this one. And I can't talk about what happens in this book because it leads on from the first one, but trust the process. The next book we have is The 7 Year Slip, which if you can't tell by the front cover, this is actually a proof copy, so I was really kindly sent this before it was released, and I just fell in love with this book. Literally fell in love with it from the beginning. Haven't stopped thinking about it since. Will rave about it forever. So this is a magical realism story that reads like a fiction, but it's got elements of romance in too. The plotline is a romantic plotline, but it does read like Emily Henry's books, more like a fiction than a complete rom-com romance. Again, I think just due to the other themes that are explored in this book, just like the whole women's fiction aspect, the character growth, and just grief and things like that that are being explored. Clementine has always been told about her aunt's apartment and how it's magic and all these magical things that happen in there. She kind of doesn't believe it. She's just like, yeah, okay, the apartment's magic. But one day she comes home from work and there is a guy in the kitchen. He says, I've been told that I can stay here for the summer, but he is actually from 7 years in the past. The story then follows these two characters kind of working out the whole living arrangement, because she's meant to be living there but then he's staying there, but he is from a different timeline. So it's just all really interesting, and I can't say too much about the story because you honestly need to just read it to experience it, but it is just amazing. And how Ashley Poston comes up with these concepts is just beyond me, and I just love this book so much. And again, just not only the romantic relationship, but just the whole book itself, and just the character growth, and just all the themes and stuff that are explored in here, and just some of the side characters and things that play into the plot line are just, they're just my favourite. It just really made this book a 5-star. Then we have Beartown by Frederick Backman, which is the first book in a literary fiction series. This book and the series as a whole is focused around the small town of Beartown. It's set in the middle of a frozen forest. There's not a lot of people that live there. I think it's based in Sweden, but I actually could be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that fact, but I'm pretty sure that's where it's set. And the town is so highly focused on the high school hockey team and the success of this hockey team. They have a big championship coming up, and the town believes that the success of this championship could put Beartown back on the map and kind of bring tourism in and just bring the town back to life. So there's just a lot of pressure on the high school hockey team. When an incident then happens on a night of a big championship, it kind of splits the town. Their opinion on how this incident should be dealt with, how people should be feeling about it, are just completely opposite from each other. And then we follow along in different people's point of views just to kind of understand what happened, how people are dealing with this, and it's just such an intriguing read. Like, I've just never read any other author that writes like Frederick Backman. He just has a really specific style of writing, and he is just amazing, and I just can't put into words that I think it's his style of writing that just makes this story. Like, the story itself, the fact that it's just about a town and the high school hockey team, doesn't sound that intriguing as a premise, but just go into it, just read the book. I can't wait to continue the series. I really understand why people like it, and again, like I say, I really feel that it's his writing that just makes it what it is. Then we have a book that kickstarted my love for romantasy, and that book is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is the first in a fantasy series, and it's set in a kingdom where there are ordinaries and elites. So the elites have powers and the ordinaries don't, and they're basically banned from the kingdom because they're viewed as basically plaguing the elites and weakening their powers and that sort of thing. The main character, Payden, is an ordinary, but she's disguising as an elite, and she lives in the slums in the kingdom, which is the poorer part, and she lives there with her friend Athena. And one day in the slums she bumps into Kai, who is not only the prince, but he is also the enforcer. So it's his job to make sure that all ordinaries are banished from the kingdom, and if any are found, then it's his job to basically get rid of them. The kingdom then hold an annual trials every year where the elites can battle each other. So a selection of them are basically put up for these trials. They don't really get to volunteer themselves, they're just picked out. Kind of like the Hunger Games, imagine that sort of trial until they battle until someone's a winner. So both Kai and Payden are picked to be part of these trials, and you can kind of see from the beginning there's a little bit of a spark between them, but they literally can't be together because she's an ordinary and it's his job to get rid of ordinaries. So there's a lot of tension, a lot of secrets. And the last book we have to talk about is also part of a series which I really enjoyed, but I just love the first book and just the nostalgia of it and the introduction to the characters. And that book is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So this is a YA mystery series. We follow a group of individuals called the Naturals who have been recruited by the FBI for their abilities that they have. Due to their upbringings, they've all basically developed these natural abilities that people normally train for in the FBI. So lie detection, emotion reading, profiling, data analysis, all those sorts of things. Kind of children. They're not like completely, they're young adults, we'll go with that. These young adults have developed these abilities due to the upbringings that they've had within their childhood. So they're recruited as part of the FBI to help solve cold cases. So each book follows a different case, but then there is a case throughout all of the books in the series, I suppose, to tie them together. But it's just incredible. It's so fast paced, so interesting, and I feel this would make such a good series. It's basically Criminal Minds in a book, but with a group of, not necessarily, they're not FBI agents, they're not fully trained, they just have these abilities naturally. So it's just such an interesting concept, and honestly, if they want to make this into a TV show, I would binge that. But those are all the books that we're going to talk through. So those are my top 10. Let me know whether you've read any of them, or whether they're in your top 10, or you just enjoyed them in general, or if none of them are in your top 10, let me know what is. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you in another one.